Hey there, welcome back. George Leoniak. Really excited to be back. I've got a lot to share. I think it's been about 16 days since my last video. And since then, I've been really working on a lot of new directions and have an awful lot to share. This video may be long, so if you feel like you need to take a break to digest what I bring forth, there's going to be about 3 or 4 main segments within the video. Take a break, come back to it. This information that's coming in here is going to be really new and fresh, and I really hope you're able to stick with it because there's a lot of exciting sacred geometry discoveries that I'll be sharing. So, like before, I've got a presentation that I'll be putting up here in a sec, as long as, you know, all sorts of props to go back and forth. So yes, thank you for joining me for this ride. I'm really excited to bring this to you. So let's share the screen. Okay, so let me make this a little larger. So a few days ago on Facebook, I posted this image here that was a really neat design. I've incorporated a lot of different elements, and you know, the big thing I'm talking about here, you know, to get right to it, is really about integrating and awakening and connecting to our deep soulful nature. Okay, to just be upfront about that. Is a real blend between the science that I'm bringing through here through sacred geometry, and you'll see how that links and connects to all science without leaving the spiritual elements and components to what that means to us as awakened soulful individuals on this planet. So, you know, a lot of the discoveries that I've been coming up with here, some of it's going to be related to this, what I call Solstar. It's a form that also has a name when you connect some of these lines, and I'm going to go through all that, and that's that yellow image there. And you know, I've got the square and the circle in this image, the Earth to Moon proportions, the universal grid, and the sun behind it, a person in the center with the heart. So I'm going to go through this and elaborate on this in much more detail. But this is where it started from. And so I want to just, let me zoom in here a little bit, because I'm going to really set this up to kind of prep this for where we're going and some of the key things that are going to be related to this discussion. So this is from the work of Drunvalo Melchizedek, who introduced this concept in his book called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. And he describes in there 3 levels of consciousness that interpret the one reality. And he does a simple thing here with squares and circles kind of on a grid. And here's 0 at the center point. And if you could do this yourself, and this is how I did this. If you draw a square for each level of 1, 2, 3, all the way up, you know, and here's the grid I've got up to number 9, you know, and you draw squares and see how that relates to the circle as you draw circles that go from 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up. And where that circle and that square intersect is going to give you a numerical value. And you want to see how it relates to the circumference of the circle to the perimeter of the square, and see the difference between those two, because the closer they are is closer to a phi relationship, which is in harmony with the pattern of nature and the flow of life. So we have here the first level, which is an 8 by 10 grid. Okay, so that means that the square is right here at the 4 mark, adding up to 8. And you've got this circle, a 10, 5 and 5, 10, right? So I'm just going to go through these basics just so you can get this, because this is really going to be important as we go through this presentation, because all the work that I'm doing here is moving out of our second level of consciousness here, which is at this difference of 2.3. The first level had a 0.6 level of consciousness, and that was when we were much more connected to nature. And we've been for a while in a disharmonic state at 2.3 difference, at a 10 by 12. Da Vinci, and I'm going to show you Da Vinci's work, because Dronvallo really did a lot of research on Da Vinci's Vitruvian man here, and placing him within the square and the circle. Da Vinci has this other circle that starts at the feet here, and I'll describe a little bit more about what that's about. But if you're drawing the square and a circle, we're moving towards the third level of consciousness. And the third level here is the 14 by 18, meaning that the square is starting at the 7, and that the 18th, it's a big leap in consciousness because we're jumping past the 8th all the way to the 9th level here, where the circle is, and that's at 18 total. So 14 by 18 is giving you a difference of 0.52 between the phi relationship. So our level of consciousness is really rapidly evolving from the 2.3 state of a disharmonic. And, you know, some of these actually are in proportion to a person's height, and I know that might sound a little out there, but he did this thing where if you're looking at the square here, and if you rotate the square for the person at the disharmonic state, which means that your consciousness is actually shifting to the square, just rotates on the same point of axis here, you'll see that that square now intersects the 7th square, okay? And this square to circle relationship of the third level of consciousness is what he calls the Christ consciousness state. And I'm going to show you, because that's an actual grid, and it's in the first drawing I showed you. And I'm going to actually bring that all into the geometries and show you how that relates to the geometric structures. But before I do that, I want to just jump to the next slide here and show you that how I got that grid and why I set it up that way. So when Da Vinci drew his Vitruvian man, he based it on grids of 1, 2, 3, 4. That was his base grid, basically a 2-grid type of unit. And in order to get the Christ consciousness grid, you have to base everything on 3s. So the circles in the flower of life here are based on 3. So this circle right here, that is going to be on a 3, right? 1, 2, 3. The next circle that I've got a bigger flower of life, or this is actually the whole Metatron's cube, is going to add up to 6. So each of these circles are basically just doubling themselves all the way up to the 12. So that's twice the distance from the 6. And now these go smaller. So this is a really cool image here. And I'm going to remove the grid work because I think you've got that, but I just want you to get a sense of the image itself. To just show, I'll zoom out, to just show how expansive, you know, that is when you go down from this scale, right? The same flower of life pattern, same Metatron's cube pattern of intersecting circles, you know, basically at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels of scale, and all these nodal points meet up exactly at the center spot. And this is kind of how entangled and how interwoven things are at this universal scale, even much bigger, obviously, than what I have on the screen, down to this very small screen. So as we zoom in, we'll go to 33%, right? And we'll go to 50%. And let's go into we'll jump into 75%. Right? And you can see how that same pattern is just repeating itself. And let's go way down to the smallest little Metatron's cube that is basically around one of the black circles, right? So every single small circle that you see, black circle, has a Metatron's cube. And then we could do that around these circles. So that's just how entangled and how interwoven everything is in creation. Using this template with Vesica Pisces showing up over and over again through the interlocking circles. So we go to 400, let's see what happens there. Oh, there we are. At 400%, we're way down into that little Metatron's cube at the center, right? Now let's go back because you got to zoom out a little bit here, back to 25%. So that's now based on thirds. So that's going to become important, is basing the grid work that I had on here in thirds, because we have to bring in some other elements here to why Gervallo in his book says that we've got to do the thirds for the grid. Zoom in just a bit. So we've got to bring in the ancient structure of the pyramid. You know, it's just a phenomenal structure. It contains so much sacred geometry knowledge in it. It's just mind-blowing to read about it and grasp the level of complexity that went into the structure and what it contains. So, you know, if you're going to draw these blue and this red little, let me back out again here. See this blue? This is basically a Fibonacci sequence. We could take this square here, which is what the golden mean is related to. The Fibonacci is our best way to describe that. And if you're able to create the Fibonacci sequence within this off of a 9-grid unit there. So let's zoom in just a little bit. Now you see here's a unit. This is basing 3. So the circles I had before, the black ones, would fit within this. And then that would bring you to 6. And then that would bring you all the way up to 9, which is the top of the square, right? So when you draw the Fibonacci sequence, which is 1 plus 1 is now going to give you a 2-squared box. So it's 4 squares in here. So you've doubled that to 2 squared. So 1 plus 1 is 2. And then we need a 3 squared. So you're following this arc out. So there's 9 squares within this one. And as you do that and you go 1 to 1 to 2, that line of that arc goes straight through the top of the pyramid and then comes back around. Now the other arc that's coming through this structure is coming down in, coming up 1, 1, and 2 down to here, and now that goes right to the base of the pyramid. So there's an intentional design in the way that the pyramid was constructed to bring in some of these geometries into account, especially as it relates to the king's chamber, which is right here. Interestingly, when I put the Vitruvian man over this, the king's chamber is located right about where the heart is. And this is the queen's chamber down here. And that's related to the navel, you know, where your umbilical cord would have been. So you've got the navel and the heart, the king's chamber, right? And this is passing up to like the third eye region where that goes through, and this is going to the solar plex region all the way up until it touches spirit. So, you know, a lot of people think that these pyramids were just to bury some, what do you call them, pharaoh, right? And because you've got the big sarcophagus in it. But these structures were actually part of the initiation rites of in Egyptian society to basically bring them through a process of going to these different chambers to evolve and expand their consciousness within this pyramid structure. So, you know, when you're looking at all this geometry that went into it, it was basically, let's just say like an ascension type of chamber that was to help raise these initiates to a level of Christ consciousness within this whole structure of these spirals, right? So now these are the the square version of the spiral, but you can draw a spiral, the golden mean spiral, which is going to take you out into kind of a universal type of consciousness when you follow that arc. And I know, like, I'm getting, pretty esoteric with a lot of this material, but, when I read Drunvalo's book and he talked about Da Vinci and Vitruvius, the person who Da Vinci really studied a lot of his work, and they were like looking for the Christ consciousness grid to discover it and figure out how to map the human body on it. And Drunvalo says that he hunted and hunted and hunted within all the materials that they produced and weren't able to find it. And within this presentation here, I'm going to show you some new insights that add to that puzzle piece with some new geometries that are going to help unlock that a little bit further for us in our understanding of this. As our consciousness is evolving through understanding more of the sacred geometry principles that were all related to these things. So now, of course, we could take the Earth in this situation and we could put it in the square. And this is how the Earth is related to all this. Because the Earth is within the square, and this is proportionally the size of the Earth as it relates to the proportion of the size of the Moon. So these two are the same. And the Earth circle, as it squares through this, as this circle edges around the square, it goes right through the center point of the Moon. Okay, so that even our Earth and Moon are holding this type of relationship with one another. One other neat find, let me move Da Vinci back here, the Vitruvian man. Oh, I'm stuck on that one. Okay, well, remember the Queen's chamber was right down here, right at the navel spot? If you draw a straight line, and there's actually a tunnel on the map here. Let me get rid of this here, because I'd really like to show you this. We'll just delete the Earth from this. That sounds funny, but I'm just going to take that out for a second, put him back in. And so there's actually these channels and chambers that are cut into the pyramid, one that goes to the king's chamber, and from two angles, from the south and the north faces here. And I put these purple lines. If you draw a straight line from the queen's chamber directly out and follow that channel that's cut into the pyramid on both sides, it exactly touches the edge of these squares, the seventh square, which is just phenomenal because that's the seventh square. That's the 7 to 9 relationship, or the 18 by 14, because I'm doubling those, 14 by 18. So when I say 7 or 9, basically you just double those numbers to talk about the 14 by 18 Christ consciousness level of consciousness. So when you draw from the Queen's chamber, which is right here at the navel, that goes straight up and goes right through the corners. So, think about building a gigantic pyramid with tons and tons of rock, cutting a channel, that's building a channel that's going to be angled out to touch the edge corners of an imaginary square that's floating out here in space, and that channel would directly go through those corners. I mean, we're talking like a highly advanced civilization that went through this to draw these arcs that are going to come right out of the top of the pyramid. So let's see what I've got next on the slides here. Okay, so I'm going to back out a bit so we can see this a little bit better. And I know I'm on this screen share a lot, but there's going to be a little bit more on this presentation than others, because I have to show a lot of the stuff that I don't have props for. So we've got the grid down. Let's keep removing that through these slides so we don't get confused. We'll keep the flower of life cube in there. And I wanted to show you where, if we take the star here and we place it in here at the center point, well, there you go, right? We just took the star tetrahedron, placed it in the center, and we go from all the way up to the 9th spot, and it's right in there. It's going to be a little bit more complicated than that, and just, you know, Da Vinci and Vitruvius were looking for this, and you could take this as a cube, you could put those in there, and here's the vector matrix, right, which is built on this. All these structures, you know, they just fit right inside this. Same thing, this is now, you know, a combination of cube octahedron and all those. And there we have placed all those forms right inside that. But the key question I had is, like, the Christ consciousness grid is actually a structure, geometric structure that encircles the Earth. And it's made up of this icosahedron, which is this form. I better back out here. So the icosahedron, which is a 20-sided form, which is like a 20-sided die. The dodecahedron, right? This is a 12-sided die. And when you combine those two together, like this, and you take this, this creates the points to create this, which is called the tricontrahedron, which is known as the universal vector grid or the Christ consciousness grid. So this yellow structure here that's made out of a dodecahedron and an icosahedron is what is creating this grid that goes around the Earth, which the pyramid is part of. Where its placement is within like 40 to 60 miles, something like that, of where the grid are. So all the sacred sites, whatever tradition you're talking about, you know, Native American, Mayan, Aboriginal, Christian, you know, those grid marks, they place those sacred structures, all these temples from Tibet to China, everywhere, along these grid mark places. So we've got, and there's smaller ones in here too, obviously. So this is what, when people talk about ley lines and grid networks on, it's part of this universal vector grid. And it's a geometry that's basically made up of these two base structures, the dodecahedron and the icosahedron, which create this. So there must be, you know, as I'm following this out, some way that these two geometries, you know, this geometry of the Christ consciousness grid links to the third level of consciousness that Da Vinci and Vitruvius and Tronvalo were talking about, that I just presented on. So that was really now kind of like my quest for the past few years, is thinking about this. And really within, you know, since I started sharing this material like this, and especially within these last 2 to 3 weeks, you know, I've really plunged into this deeply and have got some things that are related to this. I skipped one slide here. Let me just see what that was. Okay. Yeah, so this one was out of order. Let's just switch this one over here. So now that I showed you kind of like the basic geometries that we've been using for a while here, now the star tetrahedron, and all these are still going to be, all these are still going to be like super applicable to the Christ consciousness grid. But now we're going to figure out how to tie that in to the these two forms, this form here. Because in my mind, there wasn't really like a good clear link that I could see. Metatron's cube, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, you can draw all of the Platonic solids, which all these images are, right? The dodecahedron, the icosahedron, tetrahedrons, all those are part of Metatron's cube. It just doesn't really show you how they relate to one another, meaning how they join together in relationship. It just, you can draw the images from there with a good degree of accuracy. So I started working with these new forms. They're not new forms. One of them is more of a new form because it's kind of the internal structure. And I call this one, this blue one here, right? I've been calling this the Solstar, and the star tetrahedron fits right in this. Okay, so the little corner points here go up and meet all the corner points, but we have this point here, right, that kind of puffs out. Let me just stop the share real quick because I didn't even know that form existed, but this, I created this one in the winter of 2019 and into the 2020, really worked on this and designed it based off of this shape that I've shared in some of the other videos that I was calling the Lovahedron, right? And then I would take these chestahedrons and I'd place these like down inside the bottom of these points around this, 1, 2, and there's a third on the back. And then the top point, whoops, that one's sinking down. This one's solid. This one is would come up out of the top. And if I took a little dome, I don't know if I have one of those over here. Yeah, I do. So I made these little domes, right, that matched the top surface of where that chestahedron point popped out and matched that to the edge of this octahedron-y type shape below. And then I went all the way around it, you know, 8 sides, and I came up with this shape. And when I made it, you know, this whole thing, I was really doing a lot of research, like, what is this? Like, I don't know, I can't find anybody talking about this shape because it's kind of an octahedron is in here. And the octahedron is, do I have a regular octahedron around anymore? Don't, but it's that 8-sided shape I showed in a lot of other videos. There's an octahedron within here, and you know, these points come off it and they're kind of all squished. It's not your full star tetrahedron. It's kind of inflated a little bit because of the Lovahedron shape that's below it. So I puzzled and puzzled and puzzled over this, like, you know, looked at it from all these different angles. If you hold it this way, you could see that the square is in there, which are the tetrahedron points. If I held it this way, you know, the star point is up and down. I couldn't find anything on it, you know, until this week. And wait until I show you the discoveries of what I found on this. So while I was doing this, you know, I found back then that, you know, this all matched easily, you know, to the Earth and Moon proportions, all the stuff that Da Vinci's work was looking at on that grid of the 18 by 14. And, you know, I put it in this sphere here and, you know, drew this out like this, you know, these metal bands here would basically encircle this in this kind of neat thing. And I did all these measurements between the size of the Earth, which would, this would fit inside of this square, right? Because the Earth is the square, would fit in there, and the Moon was this square, right? So the Moon would fit in this one, and I was placing those two, you know, I figured out how to place those two together like this to get all that square and circle geometry that I was just talking about. And this is all kind of before this recent material that I'm going to share with you. So, okay, so that's just a little bit of the background about why I've been fascinated with this shape. And, you know, at the time I felt like it was going to really start to unlock some new things. And it really hasn't been, you know, has been in the past 2 to 3 weeks that I've made all the connections, at least for me, that kind of pulled this all together. So let's get back to the sharing the screen here. All right, so there's that shape, and you know, here it is drawn 2D, and that's how it fits within the star tetrahedron. And you know, this form right here, this one down here, if you connect the lines here, right? I'm going to make a cube out of this. If I connect from here back to here to here to here, that's a cube, and now it has a little kind of dome thing. And this actually creates a 24-sided die. So the structure that I am calling that Solstar is actually a, let's take out Metatron, or the star tetrahedron. That pushes up, that's where the octahedron, this is the octahedron. If you push this up, that's the one that fits right in there to kind of inflate and bulge up the side points, okay? So it's taking that regular star tetrahedron, adding an octahedron out here to kind of inflate it a little bit. And so this is called the Tetraxis hexahedron, okay? And it's got 24 faces. And this thing, the Solstar, is what is kind of the internal geometry. Just like the star tetrahedron is the internal geometry of a regular cube, this blue one is the internal geometry of the Tetraxis hexahedron. So, you know, and the cube fits right in it. So this is totally compatible with our prior knowledge of how important the star tetrahedron is. And it's basically a cube, you know, 6-sided die. It's a cube. And now this has these little bulges from the octahedron inside it that gives you 24 faces. So, okay, why is this all important? I know I've got this here in the middle. You know, this is basically just to show you how this all continues to fit on the grid. This is why this is important, you know, because this, I was like, all right, I'm always checking to see if anybody's thought about the Tetraxis hexahedron in terms of spirituality. And this is from 1864. And it's not like, it's like chemistry and astronomy and physicists, they play a lot with these geometric shapes. And I'm definitely finding that the chemistry world, working with crystals, they've got a lot of these geometries already mapped out, although I hadn't seen any of the Solstar shape showing up until this past week. I've got a really awesome discovery coming up. But here is the 24-sided die inside. And remember I talked about the dodecahedron before, right? And how the dodecahedron and the icosahedron are all related to the Christ consciousness grid. And I wanted to find a way to actually have the star tetrahedron, you know, and the Solstar connect directly to, at the 9th, you know, at that 18th level of consciousness, that circle, directly relate to the Christ consciousness grid. So there's no incongruency between this level of consciousness up here, which is that circle, the 18th circle, in relationship to the actual geometry that relates to it, Christ consciousness grid. And I just love the title. So I typed in a search, you know, last week, I just typed in Tetraxis hexahedron and spirituality, or Tetraxis hexahedron and religion. And this book from 1864 popped up, Religion and Chemistry, Proofs of God's Plans in the Atmosphere and Its Elements. I mean, I love the title because that's what we're talking about here, right? It's such a beautiful creation that we're discussing here. When you dig so much into it, you just know that it's from the divine inspiration. You know, that's what it's so beautifully woven and tied together. So here's the dodecahedron outlined over here. And here is where the Tetraxis hexahedron, so it already has these corner points showing up in it, right? The dodecahedron already has those points, but what creates that bar going across there, right? And right here, see that point will connect right there, and that's what gives you a more fuller version of the dodecahedron to find out where that bar links. So you need to use the Tetraxis hexahedron and the Solstar connection to completely build out this, find these points on the dodecahedron. So I spent like 4 days trying to accurately find those points through these drawings coming up. Excuse me. It wasn't easy to do, but I really worked on trying to figure out where those points were. Because it felt like some sort of link and key in our evolution of understanding our connection to this level of consciousness as sacred geometry talks about it. So, here is the center thing. I'll take off the grid again because I think it's just getting in the way. And, I worked really trying to make everything as accurate as possible to find out exactly where these points, which are the yellow ones, are going to touch the bar of the dodecahedron, and where the red ones build out all the way to make the full grid for the Christ consciousness grid. So if we put this back in, let's zoom way in here. And into 50% maybe. All right. So, and how this all fits to the flower of life is also really important too. So as you see, we've got our red points corresponding around the edge, right? Those are the star points that are now touching up and around the edge. And here's the octahedron points that are just outside of the Earth circle. And we're going to take that Christ consciousness grid, which has the icosahedron and the dodecahedron in there. And now you can see where the yellow dot is, right? Where these yellow dots are, they're going to intersect, and I have the red lines on here so you can see this red and blue. The red is the dodecahedron line, that's the icosahedron line. They'll intersect at those yellow dots, right? Here's the red and the blue line, right at the yellow dot, the red and the blue line, right at the yellow dot. And then these are the red dots that are connected to the regular star tetrahedron that's in there, right? And we could do that same thing with the tetraxis hexahedron here. Here's the yellow dots. And here they are. And those are the 24-sided die. And there's a 24-sided die, a little cube that has these little inflated edges, which you can roll around and have 24 sides. So it is definitely an evolution from a regular cube to an expansion to a 24 cube. And the number 24 has a lot of significance to the Fibonacci sequence. And I'll show you that all in just a moment too. So here we are. We're linking this right up to the edge of the Earth, all the way up to the Christ consciousness grid. And that's the connection, the geometric connection to the two, where we link Christ consciousness grid to the star tetrahedron and everything that we've been linking and talking about in sacred geometry for a while. So, this is at a particular angle, and it's not straight up and down like this. You're looking at this with the point towards you like that, and if you rotate that, the axis from here to here is going to be off to the side like that. So, I decided to figure out how to draw these shapes in every possible angle to see where the tops of these would show up. So, this one here, if we put it right in the center, when you tilt it back like that, it shows up, now we're looking at it. Let me stop the screen share because there's going to be a bunch of different views coming in here. So like I said before, we're looking at this like that. And if we rotate it this way, the top point and the bottom point, which are here and here, they're on an angle. So it's not straight up and facing you. So if you're actually rotating this around like that, and I think I talked about that in the other video, it would actually have a orbit like this going around, rather than just spinning kind of on an axis like this, because that center point is tilted towards you. And that's how a lot of those drawings in the flower of life are. So if we tilt this back, go back to screen share. This is what it elongates the top and the bottom. So then I, figured out the correct placement to create the Solstar in a way that would link straight up and down like that, along with the Tetrahedron hexahedron here, and the dodecahedron, which is part of that Christ consciousness grid, would fit right over that like that. So now that's how that view is where it brings you, and it brings you up to the 10. Okay, and I really agonized over trying to really figuring out how to make this as accurate as possible, because there is no guidebook of how to draw these this way. And I found this amazing. Like, here's the drawing. I didn't do that one, and I'll show you the source of where that came from, and it just blew me away, because this shape is going to be and is now becoming a very important structure in our consciousness. Now, this one is slightly tilted back towards us, away from the screen. So these points aren't matching up because they tilted it a little bit, but there's the structure that fits right over it. It's pretty much a one-for-one match. And it's got some real credible scientific underpinnings to it now. And I had no idea, and I don't think many people do. I'll save that for later. So just hang in there, because there's a big piece on that in just a moment. Let me just finish up this other piece with the Earth and the Moon and all those things. So here we are with the spirals of energy going out, and we've got the Earth and the Moon. And now we're going to take that whole grid as one unit, bring it in here, place it at the center spot. And there is the Christ consciousness grid around the Earth, centering on the Moon. All right. So, it's all kind of unified now in terms of the grid in relationship to the Earth and Moon proportions, and to the 8 by 14, the 14 by 18 grid, which is the third level of consciousness connected to the geometries. So that's if it's tilted like that. Now, there's something interesting here that goes on when you put in the other version, right, where it's tilted back, so you're looking at it from a side view. Move the Earth. Oh, that moves Da Vinci. Let's move the Earth. See, now all of a sudden those points, remember, they go up to the 10th. So, when you look at these objects and you move them from different views, at some points they'll be within that sphere, or they won't be, because the sphere is a kind of fixed stationary thing. But the object itself, you're kind of rotating that around. So, I was like, well, what's that about? Because first of all, the grid here is tilted, right? This Christ consciousness grid is like off to this side, right? We see that. And the star tetrahedron is up and down, right? North, south, up and down. But here's this tilt. They're not, that's the funny thing about this, is like, why aren't they one on top of the other in a straight line? So, as I'm puzzling through this and asking those questions that bring me further into the exploration, I decided to tilt the grid, right? Tilt the Christ consciousness grid, and I scaled it down here so that, remember before, these red dots were actually out on the spirit edge, but now I actually put them right at the size of the Earth here, right? So now, because they say in the research that inside the Earth is the star tetrahedron, or moreover now, the way I look at it is inside the Earth is that Tetrahedron hexahedron shape, the Solstar in there, because it's the next level up in our kind of expansion of our understanding of this. We put those in the Earth, and then I tilted that whole Christ consciousness grid, because on the maps they show you of the Christ consciousness grid, the top of the grid is at north. It's not off to the side like this. So when I did that, I said, okay, well now the star tetrahedron is angled, right? So, I'm not able to, and who knows, like in the way it really all works, there's energy moving in every which way direction. But if I'm kind of fixing things like this, and actually connecting the points to how a star tetrahedron and would relate to the icosahedron and hold those in fixed positions, those red and blue match the yellow dots, right? So if I rotate one, the other one's rotating with it. And I wouldn't understand why it wouldn't be that way in kind of a structure, right, that is the real object. So when I bring this Earth over, right, and put it in the center here, I flipped it back around, so this number is backwards here, and I have it at 23. This line here is 23.5 degrees. On the computer, it only doesn't let me do 0.5s for PowerPoint. Amazing, I'm doing all this on PowerPoint. But so I can't, it's a 23-degree angle, so it's just a tad bit off, but our Earth has a tilt to its axis, right? And it's at 23.5 degrees, and when I tilt the Christ consciousness grid, it shifts the Solstar over to exactly the angle of our Earth's tilt. Okay, so that just shows how all this is like, why is the Earth tilted? Well, for one reason, at least sacred geometrically describing it as the Earth relates to the Christ consciousness grid here, or the UVG, the universal vector grid. Okay, that's the UVG, and there's a lot of research done on that. If you tilt it over, the star tetrahedron and put the north like the way the UVG shows, the top of the UVG grid, well then that tilt of the star tetrahedron, the soul star within here, matches the actual tilt, which, is really cool because I didn't go in planning that was going to happen. That just showed us the tilt, what the tilt was. So, people ask questions like, how could these ancient people, how could they understand this and speculate about this? Well, they quite very well were just doing a lot of the same things like this with the geometry and seeing how these things all fit together and seeing that there's this tilt to the star tetrahedron in there. Which I showed in my last video, over a 6-year cycle goes through a process of a spiral which goes back to being straight up and down and then goes back out once again over another 6-year cycle to going back straight up and down. So these things are not fixed. They're fixed in these drawings. But as our understanding elaborates with the technology we have, we're getting a much more cohesive view of how dynamic things are. I'm just blown away that sacred geometry can lead to many of these discoveries. Now this one here is now with the Earth tilted, and that's what it's facing straight up and down. So it's not angled, it's in this view. It's not with the point towards you like that. And still the same thing happens here where it touches the outsides. And the dodecahedron that I only have in this one, it fits perfectly within the square with the Earth circle is contained within. Just furthermore showing that the Earth is encased within this UVG, which many of the sacred sites that exist are placed along the points at these intersecting points on the grid. That's why they're sacred sites, and there's a sacred geometry that's associated to the sacred sites that different traditions observed for millennia. So let's zoom out here. And I just thought it was really neat here to just take that out. When you do those spiral, squared spirals here, it certainly does look an awful lot like a fish to me, right? These two spirals, I blew them out. I have another one where I kept going, but you know, they look very much like, here's the moon with the eye of a fish and a little puckered lips and a nice tail there. Interesting design, huh? All right, so, you know, I kept exploring, you know, the different views that you could now look at the Solstar shape. You know, we looked at it so far. Let me stop the share real quick. We've looked at it like from this view, and now we have looked at it from, you know, the north, south, up and down view like this. So we went from here to here, and that changes all these little geometries just slightly. And believe me, it really was difficult to figure out just what that looks like on the grid, how much of an incremental change, because I'm not doing this with like a CAD system, which just locks it in and you just start rotating it around. So, you know, then we're going to take that view, and now we're going to start to look at the view from this view and this other view, which is, let's see, we got a side view, this view here like that, you know, and this view over here, and that view. Yep, you got these two other views coming up. This view and that view, right? So here the square, 1, 2, 3, 4, that makes the square. So that's the tip of those points. And then we're going to turn it and face it like that, like this, excuse me. Turn it, face it like that. So all these views are important because they're giving you some different information about the same object, all right? And I'll show you where this led me when I started looking at it from this view. So, okay, so we just put the Earth as the same thing. Here's the UVG grid in the white curved lines that are underneath the yellow. This is the Grace Consciousness grid. Of course, I'm taking a flat object and now we're wrapping it around the Earth with the white points corresponding to where the yellow would be. And a while back, because remember I mentioned the Tetrahedron, which was a lot of the inspiration for building all these sculptures, right? Did I forget to share the screen? Let me see here. Oh, no, I shared the screen. Okay, we're good. So a lot of the inspiration for sharing all these structures. Oh, wait, sorry, I didn't. Let me do it again. Here we go. I wasn't up in the top corner there, so I was wondering where I went. Here I am. So, you know, here we go. We've got this view here of the Earth, and we've got the white UVG lines like I just described. They're corresponding to the yellow grid, taking the 2D to the 3D. And the Tetrahedron, you know, remember this form was inspired by joining the Tetrahedron, which is a new geometry that Frank Chester came up with, the 7-sided image. And I used it in a way to place it, the triangle of the base of it in the bottom of an octahedron, so the top would come out through the middle, creating the lovahedron shape, right? And then I created this, and I showed you this before. I placed those little caps on top like that. That is the real inspiration of this. And Frank's work is really awesome because his representation of the Tetrahedron is an accurate representation of where the points of the Tetrahedron line up in the Earth. Let me move this UVG grid since they're the same color. So the Tetrahedron points will line up, you know, at, let's say this is north. These are the corner points. This is connecting over here to the bottom. It'd all be spherical, remember? And those points will line up and touch those positions. And it does so in a much better way than the regular star tetrahedron does. So what Frank's work was doing, and what I'm continuing now to confirm, is that the Tetrahedron is a better example, a better understanding, a new understanding of the geometry and structure that's inside the Earth than just looking at it from the classic star tetrahedron view. The other cool thing is this Frank Chester here, you know, the geometry of the Chestahedron, as he spun it around, he also discovered that it holds the same internal geometry that the heart is based on. So we got the earth and the heart and the structures all coming together. So our earth, our being, our soul, everything is all connected to the same energies and underlying geometries, which are radiant and alive. And, you know, we're connecting this all to a higher dimension of consciousness evolving, rather than it just being more information and discoveries. We're tying this into radical transformation in our consciousness, which has a lot to do with clearing out a lot of the negative underpinnings of our thoughts and emotions as well. And there's a whole inner tracking side to this piece that plays a part in the transformation. It's not just about learning new concepts like I'm going over here, okay? So what do we got? What do I have next here? Where am I in this? Okay, I gotta back up a bit. Okay, so, you know, that was that form, and just to finish that thought, like, I'm very into inner tracking and all the healing work that comes associated with our thoughts and emotions. And that these forms have a way of showing the universal connection between everything and placing you within a mindset and a framework that there is no separation, which is really the root cause of, you know, all distortions in our understanding of reality is in separation, okay, is based on that separation. So, you know, that's why these forms in my mind and the way I'm describing them are important to the whole inner tracking transformation that goes hand in hand with all this. So let's move on to another view. This is the same view that I was just showing you. And it's amazing that all these are the same view of the same object, and it looks completely different. And, you know, here is the red box, right, is just a star tetrahedron is in a cube. That's basically all it is a cube. This is the octahedron that is now pushing up and inflating the 24-sided die that I was talking about, right? And at the same time, it's giving you that tetraxis hexahedron, you know, 24-sided image, you know, the 24-sided die that I was talking about. And, you know, those all show up here and match up to these points on this grid. And one thing I discovered with doing this is, you know, I was checking out the relationship here between where these points are showing up. Put this one on here. We're going to bring in Fibonacci's sequence here because the top of the point here matches the 9, right? That's where the octahedron pushes up. And the square is at like 5.5, somewhere roughly in here, right? And when you do those calculations, because remember, Gianvallo's work, where you take the 18 and the 5, and, you know, I was like, well, what's the relationship now between those? So if we take these numbers here, and we take the 5.56, where this roughly shows up, the red line going across, double it, that equals 2, 9 by 9, right, equals 18. So we're taking the 11.12 and dividing that by the 18. And this is distally now. This is not a circle to square circumference. And you take the 18 divided by 11 and 2, that's 1.618. And that's the phi relationship. So basically, this stick, the black one and the yellow one, the 9, the yellow one is there, and this one represents right here. So this distance from where the red, in the tetraxis hexahedron, basically what I'm saying, or within the Solstar. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, fell back behind there. Got to bring it to the front. Bring the front. So this this black one right here is matching up to the red, right, which is about 5.5, somewhere in that range, 5.56. And the yellow, right, this is what expansion of life, and the circle, the Fibonacci sequence, is the spiral, right? It's in all the plants and flowers, it's in the galaxies, those spirals in the atomic structure, the DNA spiral. All of this is based on this relationship that is now being shown as a relationship between this octahedron and this square. And that was something that we really haven't brought to the forefront. So the Solstar geometry here between this octahedron point to this one in this, back out here, in this view right here, okay, get the lighting on this better. In that view, the top of the octahedron, right, is right here, that's the bottom of it, to the square. You cut from here to here, and then take the distance all the way up to the top, that's going to give you the golden mean proportion on both ways. And, you know, I discovered that not through this, because why would I just add that up like this? Let me just show you something, because I took that a bit further. Well, here, let me just back up and just show you. Well, here it is with the Christ consciousness grid on it, you know, just different views of the same forms. That's the Christ consciousness grid. This is the icosahedron from the side. And this is the dodecahedron from the side, right? So those are all those linked together. We don't have to spend much time on that. That's just showing you, you know, that all these views are just changing and they look very different from different views, but they all add up basically to the same thing. But I want to really get this point across with the phi relationship here, okay? So this is a previous grid that I did, and I discovered when I was looking at this, I said, wow, this is really interesting. I've got a 5 square to an 8, right? And the Fibonacci sequence is 1 plus 1 equals 2, 2 plus 1 is 3, and you're always adding the previous value, right? So if we went from the 2 plus 1 to 3, there's the next red circle. The 3 plus 2, there's the 5, right? And then if we take the 8 plus 5, right, that's going to give you a 13. Look where all these are showing up. They're just nested inside one another. Here's the 13. So this structure of the Solstar, oh man, I forgot to do the screen share again. I'm going to have to do that all again, so sorry. I guess I'm just too excited about what I'm showing you here. Just stick with me. This is a really neat part. Wait a second, I shared the wrong thing here. Stop share. That was to share the, stop the share, share, where's the share? Share screen, okay, there we go. Share screen. Where is it? Oh, wait, here it is. That's what my desktop looks like, for instance, so you know. Okay, here we go. Let's do this again. So I must have been doing that for a little bit. Anyway, I talked about these different forms here. And okay, so here we go. Let's do this one more time. Here's the Fibonacci sequence, right? And when I built this out on a different grid work before, it went from 2, okay, 1 plus 1 equals 2. There's the red one. The 2 plus 1 is the 3. That gives you the 5, right? The 3 plus 2, that gives you the 5. The 5 plus 3 gives you the 8. And see how the octahedron and the square are related to one another within this sol-form shape. We're going to go all the way out to 13, right? Because now we're going to take the 5 and the 8, still holding the same geometric proportions, and we're going to bump that all the way up to 13. Now the octahedron now meets up at the top of the square, right? The new square that's there. And then it's going to go further on. So as you build this out, let's go back to 25%. I think I even could go further here. Let's go to 10% of the size of the screen. So yeah, I brought this all the way out. Look how big that is, right? It's holding the same geometric proportion, I think all the way up to the 34th level of this Solstar shape, holding the proportional distance from that octahedron to the tip of the square, okay? To me, that's just phenomenal. I haven't seen that anywhere else, that the Fibonacci sequence is contained in the geometric structure. We see it normally like spiraling around, and that's when we're looking at it kind of like on a flat 2D reference point where you see squares kind of building out and getting bigger as you go around. In this case, it got me thinking, well, if it's expanding up and down, the octahedron here is also expanding towards you and away from you and out to both sides. So this made me want to recalculate all Fibonacci numbers to put it into three-dimensional space, right? Rather than just a kind of unilateral direction. So we're going to take Fibonacci numbers. Let me zoom in here. Too much. Okay, so we're going to take the Fibonacci numbers. And here they are. It's 1 through 24. It's a 24-bit sequence. And here's the numbers 1 plus 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. And you know, I love digital compression. I think it's just the greatest thing in mathematics. Because even someone like me who has like very little mathematical background could start to grasp these larger concepts and link them to geometries through this digital compression, because everything starts to make sense when you see that these numbers, when you compress them, 4, 4, and 1 equals 9, 8 and 9 equals 8, 5 and 5 equals 10, right? 1 and 0 equals 1, 3 and 4, 7 plus 7. And Jane Math Magics, you know, great sacred geometry work. You know, he put it on this here and it goes around. And this is the Fibonacci sequence, which once it gets past the 24th sequence, interesting that we have a 24-sided structure, you know, with the Tetrahedron hexahedron, you know, one all the way around, once it starts to go back around, these numbers will just repeat infinitely. And in the previous slide, you know, what I was showing you was that if you take the, you take that dimensionally and build it out like an octahedron, you have a line of energies going this way from a center point, up and down, and towards me and towards you, right? We're going like that in space, you know, and why the Fibonacci numbers are important, let me just back up, because as they go on, they start to closer and closer replicate the phi relationship. So obviously when they're verse starting out, because it's just our best way to kind of figure out the beauty of the geometry of nature that Fibonacci came up with, was just 1 plus 1, 2. And as we go along, it closer and closer starts to resemble the relationship of 1.618, which will just hover around that as you continue on the sequence. It's never just fixed and static. There's always fluctuation in the phi ratio, because if it was just static, everything would crystallize into like the perfect structure where they would have no evolution. It would just be crystallized. So things have to keep evolving and have slight variation within that. So now what I did here was I based it cubically, right? And said, we'll go make it 6 6, and then 12, because we're going one box in each direction, right? So one box over here, another one here. Well, that's 2, 3, and 4 up in here, 5 and 6. And then do that again, that gives you the next 6, the next 12, right? 6 plus 6 is 12, right? 6 plus 12 is 18, right? 18 plus 12 is 30. So I built out all the numbers for the same sequence going in 6 directions, okay? And then I said, okay, I'm gonna put that on the same, layout. And it's just phenomenal that when you build it out in the 6 directions like that, that the Fibonacci numbers are gonna now produce the 3 numbers that I am always excited about in a lot of my videos, that Tesla was fascinated, said it'd be the secret keys to the universe, right? 3, 6, and 9. Well, here is Fibonacci numbers, which before were based on, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 4, 3, 7, 1. A bit more, there's a pattern there for sure, but now this is very condensed. It's like even more to the root essence, because now we're moving in a geometrical structure. We're going down to 9, 6, 6, 3, 9, 3, 3, 6, 9, 6, 6, 3, 9, 3, 3, 6, 9, 6, 6, 3, 9, 3, 3, 6, 9. So that's almost like a little mantra you could do. It's really cool. 9, 6, 6, 3, that's what it looks like compressed. And that's the expansion of those. Let me go back to the previous slide of basically what you're looking at here, right? That's the Fibonacci sequence of nature, basically expanding and blossoming out from every point, right, of different size concentric circles that are based on this octahedron and cube joined together in the Solstar structure, which is kind of the inner workings of the 24-sided die Tetrahedron hexahedron. Now, when I was doing this, I was like, I never did this before, but I'm going to add up all these numbers around the outside and see what they come up to. Is 117 starting at 1 and going all the way to 9. It gave me 126. Yes, that would add up to 9. That's cool. But as I said, I bet you this is going to add up to 144, because 144 is a natural harmonic of light in nautical miles, right? This guy, Bruce Cathy, figured out the speed of light off the Earth's surface at the equator. So 144 is the harmonic of light. I said, I bet you it's going to add up to 144. So I just started adding it up, and I just went around, and I got all the way up to here, and I was like, oh, 135, right? So close to 144. You have to really complete that circuit. It's almost like you're going like to an octave, like a musical note. And as you're going around and you're going through the scale, right, until you get to the 8th note, which is the octave, right? You got 7 notes on the piano. They're going up, and you got that tension note that adds right before you get the octave. I mean, musicians use this all the time to bring that resounding yes type of feeling, is to return back to the octave. And that's essentially the way I vision this, okay? It didn't add up to 144 at this point. It got to the speed of light at the octave point, which is the next loop in the cycle. Just me playing with the numbers, might or might not be something to that, but I get a feeling from that kind of resonates with my intuition that somehow 144 would be playing a part in this whole picture. So let's see what we got next here. Okay, now, so we've gotten 3 views so far, and you can see that each view, the first view is giving us all the Earth and Moon proportions and the proportions of the human body in the solar star. The second view is giving us the Fibonacci sequence, right? And the third view now is going to give us something even really, really interesting that was totally unexpected. That view is like this, right? It's Solstar on its orientation side view. So it's basically, the cubic side just turned to the side like that. And as we go back, here's the Tetrahedron hexahedron view of that when we build it out now with the 24 circles. Let me show you that by itself. Put it over here. So you can visualize this. So here's the faces, right, of the 24-sided cube. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's like a little picture of a cube. Picture the top surface of the cube. And now this is one face you can see and another, and one face you can see. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 here, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, on the back side of that is the other 12. Okay. So, and the Solstar is basically connecting these lines around again, and that gives you this form. Okay. So this is the inner workings of this Tetraxis hexahedron. The Tetraxis hexahedron is this Solstar, which I don't have a good, I don't have a name for it, so that's the name for it for me. But amazingly, what's that? Right? That's the Solstar, and I didn't draw that. And I was like, middle of this past week, I'm like, I've got to find this form if I'm going to talk about this. The name is actually, the Solstar is called the Tris Octahedron. Thrice, tris is the Greek word for thrice, okay? Meaning that the octahedral sides are pointed up. I still like Solstar, I'm going to use that. Thrice octahedron is cool too. That's if you want to look this up. But I found out what it was. I researched, and found out it was the Tris Octahedron, Tris Octahedron. And this is a drawing where someone put this inside. Well, I'm doing this out of order. We'll get back to that. But anyway, it's a couple things. There's the big reveal in a sec. So here's this dihedral angle, which was exactly the same, the same, it was just the same here, right, as what I had drawn here. And here's the top point, and it just wraps around this, and they pack this all point in this beautiful gold color, right? And you wouldn't believe it, but this is what this is related to, right? Science Bulletin, 2020, May. Okay, this is all like in the time scale that I'm really like working on doing this. This is from a journal article in Science called The Importance of AU, which is gold, nanostructures in CO2 electrochemical reduction reaction. So this is AU, gold 221. AU 111 is just a regular octahedron. And this is so cool because like everything that I've been doing with all these geometric forms of like seeing how one shape morphs into the other, the rhombic dodecahedron, octahedron, cube, are going through these transitional states. And this is from these science journals that are essentially doing the same thing that I'm doing. And I had no idea that when I constructed this structure in the winter, that this is all like important structure to what's currently happening. And I just love seeing it on the front of this cover. Look at this beautiful picture of the same structure. And it's showing that it's a potential to take the CO2 reduction, right? So we're talking about the Earth's atmosphere, the Christ consciousness grid, right, that I've been talking about, with the Solstar little Christ conscious unit that brought us to the Christ consciousness, putting this out in the atmosphere, right? Connecting the CO2 to heal our planet, right? Of the consciousness that we previously had that created these situations. There's some link there that we have to explore a little bit more to ponder on, is just how our evolution of our consciousness is going to evolve when new shapes like this are connected to our science and our spirituality and to our own personal evolution, okay? I was just blown away by this, right? And it only gets better from there. When I made that link, I started researching more because now I could figure out more about what it relates to. So, they're working on building these gold nanocrystals, the Tris Octahedral to the rhombic dodecahedral structures. And here they are in the gold at the atomic structure, right? Building them, putting them together, piecing them together. And this is where that image way back I had, it's showing all the 4 views pretty much that I just showed you, okay? Someone did that same type of stuff that I work. And the funny thing is like, I don't get to see this stuff for some reason until after I've done it all. And then I get to take a look and research and then come across the discovery. But before I do it, I didn't have any work. I mean, I worked so hard doing all those drawings to get it all accurate, and then realized that that's already been done. But it's not the fact that it's already been done, it's the importance that what it's going to mean for us, right? For our future. So here they are, they're doing these cool drawings, which I've been talking about, you know, from a cube to the Tris Octahedron, the Rhombus dodecahedron. They even have the lovahedron in here, right? This is it right here with the, let's make that a little bigger so you can see it, because I talked about the lovahedron quite a bit before. You know, that's the lovahedron, you know, with the, I'll try and set it up just like they've got it in the picture with the little tips of the cut off there. Well, that's this right here, right? And they're showing, like, this says possible geometric shape evolution from octahedral to rhombic dodecahedral structures. Isn't it possible? This is it. I mean, this is the way the geometry is working, because I based all this on the flower of life, and the flower of life is all connected to this reality. And it's showing up in our chemical biology, is showing up at our planetary level, showing up in our soul flow evolution, is all connected. You know, we're just scratching the surface of how far we're going to go with that. But I love seeing the images of these little guys all packing together. And, you know, as I researched that a little bit further, let's make this side of the screen a little smaller. Here it is again, you know, more views. This is back with the gold. Look at that. There's the hexagonal structure of how these things are packing together in the space that they're contained in. Very small view of gold. And this is an article now that relates to the same structures, because those previous ones are now related to people using the gold nanoparticles, not only for atmosphere reduction, but also for biomedicine and treating tumors and figuring out how to get quick results in lab tests. So, you know, there's a bunch of articles around there. From this one's from 2011, so there's been some background with this. December 2019, gold nanoparticles, new routes across old boundaries. Exactly, yeah, new, K-N-E-W, new, right? We knew this stuff because back in the day, gold has been a precious metal for more reason than one, because it has all these healing properties to it, and we're bringing that all up to speed and now incorporating this into our modern medicine. It's going to have profound impacts, and it's just mind-blowing that, you know, this article here, I think it was Golden Age, has a big picture of King Tut right on the front with the gold that they used for the whole head ornament of that classic picture that we usually see when you think of Egypt, of King Tut's golden sarcophagus. All gold, right? And those little nanoparticles in gold are these, all right, which is just phenomenal. And esoterically, Christ consciousness color, gold, okay? So we are seeing a lot of connections here. All right, so that concludes a big chunk of that. And, you know, I'm going to shift gears just a moment. I'm going to do this all in one video. I know I've probably been going for quite a while, and I know I've had a few little errors with the video, but, you know, talking while the screen wasn't on. I'm going to be careful with not stopping the share right now, but I'm going to add this last piece in because it's all connected, and I got to put it in here now. So, you know, when I started figuring out, because I wanted to say, like, okay, how can people, you know, like myself and others who are interested in this Solstar geometry, how do we incorporate this into our new understanding, right? How do we bring the Solstar into the flower of life and the geometries that are there? Because this is something that we can start to draw and start to show, and it's going to start showing up in our artwork. And, just like Metatron's cube has, this Solstar is already showing up on the front of Science magazine. And in my mind, there's no separation between science and spirituality. So this image here is going to start to show up as in the spiritual community, which is all of us really, but in people who are really into this sort of stuff. To start to shift our consciousness is creating this in the flower of life, or not the flower of life, let's just say within this interlocking circles, right? Because the flower of life is really smaller and contained within here. And so far, consciousness has gone out to the fruit of life, which has been at like Metatron's cube, which starts at this point right here where my cursor is. And if you want to draw the Solstar easily, right? And these lines, with PowerPoint, they're tough. They should all be connecting, but they're going to go right over and connect to this point right here. All you have to do is draw Metatron's cube and all the way up to the last circle, right? Way up over here. So you've got the flower of life, do the rings, draw the 64 or 62 circles, whatever it is, and draw from this point, which is now where the octahedron that's inside that, right? So the octahedron that you're going to draw is going to be in a different place than where you've drawn it in the past for Metatron's cube. It's now in a spot that it is Metatron's cube octahedron spot right there. We want to draw the star tetrahedron points up above that and have them come up and now meet on the back edge of the fruit of life. Okay, so they're going to come back up here and then just go about connecting all those lines, right? And you've just drawn the Solstar. I've made it bigger because the way I've been using it before, it was showing up drawn in a different place. But if you want to scale it easily, because remember, these images, they just show you where the drawing is. It often doesn't show you the relationship of the structure to the other structures. So that is how you draw the Solstar, like that. And it's containing the star tetrahedron, the octahedron, which are going to all be in black. So the star tetrahedron is still in there. Whoops. Here it is. There they are, okay? Star tetrahedron, these lines are a little off. Okay, we'll leave it like that for now. Octahedron, star tetrahedron, Solstar, which is essentially the Tris Octahedron, the technical name, Tris Octahedron, and that when you do these outer lines, that creates the Tetrahedron hexahedron. Okay, so this is the next evolution in our sacred geometry understanding I'm going to present right now. And because this is going to give us a real new information system to start working with. So I'm going to take this and just connect all those dots and just make it yellow, right? So just like Metatron's cube, this is going to give us something different. And the only thing that I added here is I did all those lines and I saw that there's a line that continues from this spot here, and I have it marked here in blue. And when you do this, you take this form right here, which I've drawn like this because essentially it's like it's a six-planed object. It's like crossed like this, up and down, like that, and plane horizontally, up, down, and front and back. Okay, so that structure is in here like this. When you draw those out, okay? So this right now is going to be a whole new way to draw a lot of the forms. And I have about 24 forms or more of all sorts of different types that I'm going to do in a different video. But I'm going to give you the ones that fit to this right away, okay? So the dodecahedron in original Metatron's cube took Trinvalo many, many, many years to find. He puzzled over where's the dodecahedron. And with this new cube. I got a name for it. I'll tell you what it is in a second. This new Metatron's view. The dodecahedron fits perfectly within these lines, no problem, easily to find, right? It's just because those little corner sides things, this is the line that Vinval couldn't find for years, is already built right in to the basic underlying blueprint of this new fruit of life. And then we just go about connecting all the nodal points, and we easily have the new version. I mean, we had the dodecahedron easily, all right? So we got the dodecahedron, it's right in there. Icosahedron, same thing, easily in there, right? It fits right in the same spot. You draw these lines right up from here to those nodal points. These nodal points aren't on the flower of life points though, which is so interesting. They're just above it, and you'll only get those nodal points, this one right here, with this different drawing way that I'm doing it. But it's giving me these structures very easily. In fact, it's giving me the correct proportions of the icosahedron, because originally on the Metatron's cube, you draw the icosahedron, you just draw a straight black line right across the bottom. But the correct way to draw the icosahedron is with it angled down a little like this. And these points are already showing up, the icosahedron, perfectly. And if you have those two, well then there's the vector grid matrix, right? There's the Christ consciousness grid, not vector grid matrix, the UVG grid, Christ consciousness, right there. The lines are all built in. You don't have to add any lines for that one. It's just already showing up right there. So we've just drawn those basic structures, not basic, they're actually quite difficult to find in Metatron's cube, but they took a while to find in them, right there in this new design here. The dodecahedron, icosahedron, Christ consciousness grid. And why not? Let's just try out the chestahedron, because right, the chestahedron was a really important piece to this whole thing. And I tried to find the chestahedron previously in these drawings, and I had to come up with a whole new drawing system. I didn't realize it was already in this. But here it is. So we go out to these points. These points where the square intersects right up here. So there's a square right in here. Those touch right on the corner points. And then bam, you just draw right up to there, and you have the chestahedron drawn on a tilted angle down. Okay? Chestahedron's in there. These are now, you know, the lovahedron with the points sticking out. That's all right in there. Right? When you connect the points, these you need the flower of life, the center circle in the middle. And there it is, the lovahedron with these trimmed off here. So that's the lovahedron. That's essentially this. You know, I was puzzling in the winter and spring how to find these drawings in here. And with this new underlying structure, we've got them right away. So this is Metatron's cube. I've talked about Metatron's cube so much that I've never even shown it, and mostly because I've probably been working on something else to show the same forms, and that's what this is. This is the Tesseract, okay? So when I was looking at this, Metatron's cube, right? Metatron's cube, let's just back up. It was discovered by Fibonacci, okay? Back in the 1200s, right? Fibonacci discovered this Metatron's cube where he drew these lines. I'm calling this Metatron's Tesseract, okay? Because it's still a cube, but it's got unique properties to it that are part of our levels of consciousness of how we're going to be able to expand and view things from 3 levels of consciousness to interpret the one reality. This image I just grabbed from Wikipedia on the Tesseract. I just discovered the Tesseract the other day. I didn't even know I'd find it. Didn't even know much about it, but I looked at this image and I said, wait a second, I think that might be the Tesseract in there, right? Because this is it right here. The Tesseract is basically a cube down inside a bigger cube that has these lines connecting down to the center point. And within this within this new way of drawing Metatron's Tesseract, which I'm going to call this Metatron's Tesseract, is different than where the lines are in here. You won't see where the Tesseract lines are. And the Tesseract, I think, is going to be important as part of this consciousness expanding way of looking at things, because I realized after reading a lot on hyperspace and hypercubes the past day, is that it's part of how what I've been doing is to find these shapes, is viewing them from one angle and looking beyond 3 dimensions, right? So here's a regular square, Metatron's cube, and is bringing us to 3-dimensionality space, and this here is bringing us to this Tesseract evolutionary type of moving cube. Okay, so there's some cool videos on the Tesseract of how it moves through itself, because it's basically just made up of 8 squares, okay, that go around itself and 1 in the center. So I've always been saying that there's 1 cube in the center, and the Tesseract gives you that, and it does so in a way that it also includes the same spatial geometry to actually be 8 cubes. So it's essentially 1 around 8, but they're all joined together. So these outer edges of this box add up to 1 cube. And I'm going to show you sort of what that looks like that in a moment. So this is Metatron's Tesseract. Okay. And if you join both of them together, the Metatron Tesseract cube, here you go, you've got them all together. Metatron's Tesseract, as I showed you already, is going to give you the icosahedron and the dodecahedron and many of those other things easily. So in my mind, it does upgrade a lot of this, and Metatron's cube is contained nicely and beautifully within that. So let's see here, what do we got here? Let me just skip those slides. I'll come back to those. Let's just look at this one here, because I want to show you how Metatron's Tesseract, why it's a Tesseract, and what it does, and how it changes shape to basically be those cubes. And it creates a very interesting structure that relates all back to this Christ consciousness grid and everything like that, okay? Actually, here, let me come out one more time. So here is the Metatron's Tesseract in the middle, as I've been showing you. Here is the extended view of Flower of Life, or the circular patterns building their way out all the way up to 12. And this is now going to create this cubical structure when you build this square out. And you have to watch some videos on this, of how this square transforms into this cross. Because remember I said there's 8 cubes in there. So let me just do the transformation for you really quick. Picture this like a Rubik's Cube, like a little Rubik's Cube, right? Even though it looks like a flat hexagon type structure, and each of these look like little flat hexagons, they're 8, basically I have 8 cubes packed in there, and let's just stack them up, just like this picture right here. Because essentially this Tesseract transforms into this cross, okay? And if I stack that one right on top, I'm basically just stacking cubes. Here's that one. I know it looks like hexagons, but this is what that Tesseract, Metatron's Tesseract, is going to, help us do within our thinking and our consciousness, to be able to see the same flat object, not only 3-dimensionally, but morphing, okay? And here's the top piece. And now these, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4 up, 2 to the side, and 2 out. And now this one is going to look like it's just going to create a hexagon structure on the side, but those are now the cubes that are facing kind of back and away from it. And to illustrate that, I did this one up here to kind of take out some of those lines. We're gonna have to go to a larger screen here. Let's come over here. All right, let's get these cubes out of the way. So that cubical cross right there, as I take some of the lines out, now you can picture this is just a straight column going up the center. This one's coming through from here to here, and this one's coming through from here to here. Amazingly, this structure is the tesseract, right? And if we look at it and zoom back in, where does it show up on our grid, right? Okay, it shows up just poking up a little bit beyond the ninth circle, the Christ consciousness circle, 9, 8, that's the 18th circle, right? And here is the cube, Tesseract's cube in the middle. It's just, that's just phenomenal how it just blows up out like that. And let's take Tesseract out of here. Let's take the grid off. Because remember, we're gonna look at this from a few different, well, let's leave it on. We're gonna look at this from a few different views. So that's it if the cross is kind of tilted towards you, but how about if it's, you know, straight up and down? You'll see that it just fits right up. It gets a little taller, it gets out of there, but the actual cubes itself fit right in here, 1, 2, 3, and this is the easiest view. Let me just do the red one. Because this is obviously just the cross, red cross, the red cross. Oh, where'd it go? Red cross, there it is, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's gonna be a square in front of this facing you and one square behind it. And it's a geometrical structure of a cross. And that fits right on there, cubically, like that, right? It fits, contains these squares right here, will fit right in the 7th square. And one will come up above it. If you want to try and center it, you could. But, you know, this is just showing it goes all the way up there, contained within the 7th. So those squares fit in there, and that's how the tesseract kind of works. Of how it expands and collapses back from this view to this one. And in my mind, it's connecting all to the Christ consciousness grid, Christ consciousness connection. And no wonder, it's just, I don't know, it's a great synchronicity that the cross itself is part of the whole structure. You know, I didn't plan that. It just worked out that way. So let me just, you know, I just want to take a moment to back up and say, like, why did I get into the sacred geometry in the beginning? I'm almost done here. I know I've introduced so much. Please take some time. If you're still with me, great. You're probably going to stay to the end. But if you aren't and you've watched the video, taking some time, that's great. So essentially, the main circles of the new Metatron's Tesseract to draw essentially just come off of those last circles, these points here and here. Let's move Metatron's cube. You can draw the whole thing from this point and that point, okay? And a center point. So you're basically going from out here to here and from the center, and then you can draw the whole thing. And how I got inspired to even really dive into sacred geometry to the level that I have is I saw this pattern show up in New Jersey as the light came through this cloud, right? This Vesica Pisces, you know, this Vesica in the sky. And it created the flower of life pattern. While I was with my son at a playground, as the light filtered through these hexagonal shaped holes, these slits that were in this metal plate on the playground on the edge of this pole. And it created this beautiful 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 petals with the connecting lines, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, right, around these spheres. 1, 2, these dark circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7. And, you know, just when I've wrapped this all up, I had the flash. I said, wow, that's what I keep on my desktop and been looking at for the past 3 years, because it happened 3 years ago. And I've been really, my main source of inspiration. It was such a fantastic day because after I saw this, I knew a bit about the flower of life. My son and I went to the diner on the coast, this natural food place, great shop. And, you know, I took a cup and they had the brown drawings where you could draw on the tablecloths, paper tablecloths. And I just took the cup and drew this up just like this. This is my first sacred geometry drawing that I've done in right here. I just created the cube octahedron actually, and placed the crayons around it. That's the first drawing I ever done just on a tabletop. And then later, right after that, we went to the beach, and you know, it's just a magnificent day, seeing the cloud and the light in this flower of life pattern, doing my first drawing. And then on the beach, there's this beautiful heart that these two people, these two angels, I guess, you know, they laid down, actually did snow angels, you know, snowmen type angels, sand angels in the sand, you know, and a huge double heart. And, you know, this was like a magical day. And right after that, I went and got my first compass and have been drawing sacred geometry designs. It inspired by the light, literally, to do this. And after all that research and discoveries and excitement, the root pattern that brought me all to it, these 7 circles here that we see, were in the foundation of what I saw 3 years ago. And I found the points that create the Metatron's Tesseract were contained within this in the flower of life pattern, which, you know, is just really cool to me. So I wanted to share a little bit of the backstory of that and just create this last image that kind of ties a lot of the things I talked about in this video together. Let me get a little closer here for you. I dropped that light pattern in the background here with the earth, with the heart, the Vitruvian man, the Christ consciousness grid over top of it, the soul star in the middle, the moon-earth relationships. All that is contained within this drawing, and the crossed, you know, the Christ consciousness cross in the middle. It's all in there. And that's the evolution of our consciousness to that 3rd level with the inverted square. That's all attainable in our lives, into our awakening, into back to the beginning drawing, our complete soul embodied, interconnected relationship with all things and one another. And I know that that is quite a sacred geometrical journey, but that's what the past 2 to 3 years, and especially a major upgrade in the last 3 weeks, has looked like. And I'm really happy to share that and bring that to you. In my next video, I'm going to just share a little bit more on the Metatron's Tesseract and show you the other 20 images of classic sacred geometry designs and 3D structures that are in there, and already some new forms that are coming out of that with pentagonal structure and hexagonal structure that I just am coming up with, building things right out of this and making them into form. So one last little thing that I thought I'd show you is that at the center of every little lovahedron is this is the lovahedron, and this is the soul star. And at the center of every of these soul stars, this little empty space, if this was hollowed out, this little lovahedron is at the center of this. And it was just, I said I'd show this last time, this little tiny one that fits in the other. And, you know, that's the little empty little place in our heart that connects us all together. This small little still place. That's the unified field that's totally interconnected to everything that we're all a part of. There's not any place that that love and that omnipresence is not, okay? And that is, in my mind, all this proof of God's plan.